People spend an average of almost 2.5 hours every single day on social media alone, and being in quarantine has unfortunately turned me into one of those people. So, what can we do about this? Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome to 2021. I've been having some major deja vu. First of all, I'm back at my parents' for a couple of weeks, and we're also having crazy COVID numbers again, and also more political turmoil again. And it's feeling like a lot. As a side effect to the fuckery of the world that is happening right now, I found myself doom scrolling a lot more than I would like to be. Doom scrolling, the act of consuming large quantities of negative news all at once. All of us are well aware of the dangers of overconsumption of media, feelings of jealousy, anger, frustration, depression. A lot of negative emotions can come up when we're over consuming a lot of media. And so right now I have been feeling a lot like some social media boundaries are very much needed. And quick disclaimer that I'm not suggesting that all social media is evil and news is evil and that we should ignore everything that's happening around us. This is simply about taking a step back and acknowledging when too much consumption has started to deteriorate our mental health. And so here are a few things that I've tried to break that social media and news addiction and help me set some of those boundaries in place. First thing, turn off your notifications. I have personally had my notifications turned off of social media and news for as long as I can remember. And so the only things that I really get notifications for are text messaging and calls, as well as my mood journaling notifications and positive affirmations. So social media, news, and even emails, I found that I don't really need to have notifications for all the time. And so I found it really helpful to turn off notifications for pretty much all unessential things. And the crazy thing about the way people have designed social media, and you can really see this when you go into any social media notification settings, is the way that social media is designed is meant to draw you into their products as much as possible. And so when you go into notifications, you'll usually see that there's options for like 10 million different things that you can possibly be notified for. And this unfortunately is very intentional, and the way that people create social media platforms is to find as many things as possible to take you back into their product. And so I really feel like people should feel very empowered to go and turn off all of these notifications where possible and not fall trapped to any senses of FOMO, like you're missing out on things unless your notifications for social are turned on. Social media is not life or death. Those notifications will be there for you next time you feel ready to go onto social. And so the next tip is to set screen time limits. And this is pretty easy if you have an iPhone. Unfortunately, I can't speak for Android users, but on iPhone, you can just go into your screen time settings and set explicit screen time limits for any apps that you really want to limit your behavior on. So I personally set screen time limits for my social media apps, specifically Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, because those are the apps that I find myself being most addicted to. And I have my screen time limit set for kind of arbitrary values too. Like I think right now on Twitter, I have it set at 20 minutes a day, and TikTok maybe 45, because I do produce a lot of content on TikTok, and Instagram's maybe at like 30. And so you can kind of play around with what limits feel okay to you and feel like manageable. But I've found that setting these screen time limits has become really helpful for me, because when I kind of hit that screen time limit, it's like a little reminder that tells me like, oh, like you're about to hit that limit where this is going to start negatively affecting your mental health. And so it's kind of a good way to check myself. I also think this is really helpful for if we're not quitting cold turkey. I personally don't think it's helpful to just do a complete sudden social media cleanse. I feel like this is almost like the social media equivalent of crash dieting or extreme habit formation. I just think that those are very unsustainable things to do. And so I find that setting screen time limits and limiting your social media use is a much healthier alternative than just cutting yourself off completely. The third tip is to not use social media for the first hour of getting up. This is just from personal experience. I found that the days where I wake up and the first thing I do is check social media, check all the updates for everything that's happening in the world. Those are the days where I wake up just feeling terrible, and I'll find myself sort of mentally caught up in all the terrible things that happen throughout the rest of the day. And so I'm a very big believer that the morning hours are very, very precious, and that it's really helpful to do something that's very good for yourself in those hours. And so one thing I do that helps with this is to set my downtime to 1 hour before I go to sleep, all the way until 1 hour after I wake up. Oops, I was going through an editing and realized I didn't even explain downtime. So downtime is a built-in iPhone feature, again, sorry, cannot speak for Android, where you're able to essentially lock yourself out of apps for certain periods of time. So this is most useful if you sleep on a relatively regular schedule. I typically sleep from 12 to 8, and so what I'll do is I will set my downtime from 11 till 9. So 1 hour before I go to bed until 1 hour after I wake up. And this kind of just helps me to both unwind in the evenings, to not be scrolling endlessly in the evenings, and then also not really distract me in my mornings. And of course, you don't have to set a downtime limit on every single one of your apps if you find that you need your alarm clock, for example. That is one app that I don't have a downtime limit set on, or a meditation app, because I do a bit of meditation every morning. This is an app that I exclude from my downtime. And the last tip is to DTR, define the relationship between you and social media. And so I like to get as specific as possible when I'm doing this exercise. So I might use a sentence like, my purpose for insert social media is to X, Y, and Z. So an example might be, my purpose for using Twitter is to shitpost and look at memes. And that's my relationship with Twitter. That is my defined purpose for using Twitter. My purpose for Instagram might be to connect with friends, share infographics that I design, and promote my content on different platforms. And so now if I catch myself doing anything outside of those three things, I realize I'm not being very intentional with my social media, and I might be doing something that's going to negatively affect my mental health. So some examples on how you might use social media platforms might be to find meal prep inspo, or to discover new artists, or to learn about a different topic. And so there's a lot of different ways we can define how we want to use social media, other than just scrolling, staying connected, whatever. Get very specific about how you want to use your social media. And so when we get very specific and clear about how we want to use our social media, we can catch ourselves more easily when we're not being very intentional and just mindlessly scrolling. And so the last thing I wanted to put out here is to remember that social media is just a tool. I think it can be dangerous to define social media as completely bad or completely good, because as we can all see, I think social media can definitely do a lot of negative harm to people, but it can also do a lot of good for people. And so I think if we define for ourselves, oh, social media is bad, like we can't social media, I think for whatever reason, humans are more inclined to then move towards social media and want to engage with it. And so when we're reminded that social media is just a tool and it's not necessarily a good or a bad thing, I think it helps us to feel a lot more empowered in defining how we want to use social media, what is our relationship to it, setting up those boundaries, and thinking very critically about how social media is created, the way it's designed, I think can really help us to have a more peaceful relationship with it. And so these are some tips I had for handling social media addiction. I hope you found some of these tips helpful, and hopefully they can help to take some mental strain off of yourself in an already chaotic year. And as per usual, of course, if you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate a good old like or subscribe. All right, stay safe, stay sane, and wear your damn mask.